Redditors who have met a former crush years later, how did it turn out? We'd gone to school together on a US base in England. 16 years later I ran across her brother online after email and the internet became a thing. Yada yada, whatever happened to your sister? A few weeks later I was at home in New England, get an email from Hawaii where she was a teacher in a small town. Neither of us had married. She was as pretty as always. A few months later we were standing on the balcony at a hotel, watching the sunset on Maui while sipping champagne. Stayed in Hawaii for 10 days. We dated long distance for a few years with many trips back and forth, and then things kinda fizzled. That was 16 years ago now. We've since moved on and married different people, but it was still fun to have teleported onto a different life timeline for a bit. I do miss her sometimes, and will always adore her. We email occasionally and she knows she can always call me up if she needs a kidney or something. No regrets. Saw him in a bar on a break from uni, found out he goes to a school not too far from me. We went out again later that week, he took me to a shitty diner with a bar, realized we are both super chill and have super similar senses of humor. We then left, smoked a bowl, make out, but couldn't do more as we were visiting parents. He visited me a week later in my uni town, had the best sex of our lives. We periodically visit each other and have really great sex. 10 tenths would do again. When I was in my 20s, I saw a boy that every girl was obsessed with in the 3rd grade. I literally wrote about him in my journal every day. In elementary school, he very obviously did not care for me, but I was hopeless. We did not go to school together after 6th grade. So, imagine my surprise when later in life, we crossed paths in the grocery store and he said "Hi midnight." In such a friendly manner. I was in shock that he recognized me, and that he was being so nice. I ended up sounding like a total dick, I think. Like, "Oh, hey, hi." He made cordial small talk for a minute, but I can tell I knocked the wind out of his happiness to see me. I'm usually so nice to everyone, I was just stunned and turned back into a self-conscious 3rd grader. I hope to run into him again someday to give him the same kind greeting he gave me. I found out she'd gotten divorced and was living in a city that was 2 hours away. We ended meeting up a bunch over a couple of months. I asked her if she was interested in dating, and when she said yes, I moved too aggressively. We stopped dating, but still saw each other semi-regularly and made out a few times, and then she stopped responding to my text messages for a few years. We both married other people and don't talk more than to wish each other happy birthday every year. About 4 years ago I wished my high school crush a happy birthday on Facebook, hadn't seen him in about 16 years. He messaged me later that night, I messaged back a few hours later and also gave him my number. He called the next day, was living in a different state at the time, and we talked on the phone for hours every day since. About 6 months in we started taking turns visiting each other until he moved back here, and we've been living together ever since, almost 3 years now. I went to my senior prom with a girl I was kind of dating at the time. Nothing ever really came of it since we knew that there wasn't a future in it. College was right around the corner, and all that. Fast forward to 4 years later. I'd graduated college and was visiting my hometown for a weekend. She and I met up, did dinner, and hooked up. It was great. We were kinda familiar with each other since we'd hooked up as teenagers, but it was a lot better when we were older. All things considered, 10 tenths, I'd definitely do it again. Horrible. Met up with her on a date. I called it a date. She called it a date. I thought it was a date. At the end, I kissed her on the cheek. She said, "What was that?" I said, "I thought this was a date." Did I fuck up? She said, "I didn't realize it was a date, but it's okay." Then she said, "I have butterflies in my stomach." I am not really a feely touchy person, so I noped out. I couldn't even tell if those butterflies were good or bad. I just said, "I have work in the morning, I have to go," and then that was pretty much that. Super lame way for it all to turn out. I just wanted to give a casual kiss on the cheek goodbye. Hell, it's not that abnormal in some countries. I think I just fucked it up, guys. I don't know what I'm doing 99% of the time. Yes, you did. Butterflies in my stomach was a massive hint. My grade school crush was horrible to me. He knew I crushed hard and would ask me out only to tell me later he was joking. I was heartbroken. 10-year-old me cried so hard over it. Years later, when I was about 20 or so and ran into a friend of mine and she introduced me to her friend who turned out to be the guy who broke my heart, I lightly teased him about the heartache he caused on me. He was mortified. Cherry on top? I knew I looked amazing. I was a little nerd with glasses and tried too hard to make friends. That feeling was so gratifying. Had a bit of a crush on a girl in high school, though she didn't know about it, and I had plenty of crushes being a high schooler. She went away to a different college than I did, and we stayed in touch throughout. Looking back, we were probably a little flirty in our chats during that period of time even, but that's retrospect. 8 years later I ended up back in my college town where she just happened to be doing graduate school, and the two of us started going to a small weekly event where you could get tiny cups of wine and some cheese for free, and from that we started seeing each other. She's now my wife, on the other end of the couch right now. We're expecting a child in September. I met my old lover in the grocery store. The snow was falling Christmas Eve. I stole behind her in the frozen foods and touched her on the sleeve. She didn't recognize my face at first, but then her eyes flew open wide. She went to hug me, but she spilled her purse and we laughed until we cried. We took her groceries to the checkout stand. The food was totaled up and bagged. We stood there lost in our embarrassment, and the conversation dragged. We bought a 6-pack at the liquor store and drank it in her car. But when the beers were empty and our tongues were tired, she gave a kiss to me as I got out, and I watched her drive away. And then the snow turned into rain. He is a year older than me. We had sex on Halloween the year after I graduated. He still, for years later, works at Trader Joe's on register. I know he saw me, but I acted like I didn't and was too embarrassed to even say hi. Sex was awful. He isn't as hot as I thought he was back in high school. My boyfriend lives down the street from the store and from the school I go to. I feel like I can never go in there again, but my boyfriend goes there sometimes and doesn't know that my one-night fling works there. It's also the only Trader Joe's around my town. 8th grade crush got married and has a baby girl. Crush from around 5th grade I think is recently engaged and joined the military. Still fucking hot. I don't see the problem of working at a cash register, mate. Edit, some leprechaun shared his gold with me, thanks mate. She became a professional chef in Philadelphia, got some awards, too. Then her internet trail abruptly ends in 1999. She either got married and changed her name, or dropped out of the public eye altogether. I guess if I was really serious about contacting her, I could probably find her, but she was my first crush and she turned me down, and now she's an adult with an entirely different life. I don't want to be creepy, and who knows what she's like now. My mom went on a date with a high school crush, a friend of hers, about 4 years ago, almost 40 years after they had last seen each other, and they're getting married this June. It's so sweet, and I'm very happy to officially be able to call him my stepfather now. Edit, I'd like to add that my crush from middle school got booked for dealing cocaine. Maybe I need to stop resisting and become more like my mother. I first realized I wasn't straight when I got a massive crush on the captain of our high school chess team. We were the unruly heavy metal kids that scared all the other chess teams, and he was the most metal of all. I heard through the grapevine during college that he was bisexual, but our paths never crossed until Friendster came out. We flirted a lot on there and we were supposed to meet up while I was in town, but he flaked and I gave up because now he's fat, bald and married. I crushed on this girl hard when I was 15 or so. She was flirty and had big boobs and an incredible smile. She liked teasing me, but nothing ever came of it. I bumped into her maybe 10 years after high school. She looked even better, but I was just divorced and didn't feel like trying for it. Another 5 years goes by and I bumped into her again. She was working at a fast food place, scary thin and had meth mouth. That smile was gone for good. Sad face. You could have saved her, man. Had you taken the leap the first time, you could have saved her smile. One crush I had in college tried to get my girlfriend to dump me, I think, when we had a reunion party for all the people we used to hang out with. Never forgave that. Last time I actually saw her, her college drug experimentation had spiraled into addiction and she was bumming heroin money behind a dumpster at a gas station. A girl I had a crush on through most of high school married a guy who I always thought seemed genuinely awesome, and they look very happy with their 2 children. I'm happy for the both of them. And of course, my girlfriend was a crush of mine for 6 long years before we started dating. Well, I haven't met her, but I looked up an old girlfriend from 40 plus years ago on Facebook. I dropped her for the woman I married, second go round, and her third husband had walked out on her. Her first 2 died of cancer. I thought to myself, a black widow. I sent her some pictures from way back when and she was glad to see them, but didn't want to be friends, which was fine with me cause I just looked her up out of curiosity to see what had happened to her. Nothing good it seemed. But life went better for me than it did her. I felt sort of sorry for her. I had been absolutely crazy about her at one time. But I suspect she brought on most of her own problems. Don't we all? How is Tuso's contracting a horrible disease her fault? I had a thing for a guy in college, but it never went anywhere. We were mostly friends of friends and hung out occasionally in groups. After college we lost touch. 8 years later, when we were living across the country from one another, he emailed me sort of randomly as part of getting back in touch with some friends. We stayed in distant contact, like 2 emails a year. This was pre-Facebook. 2 years after that we both moved to the same city and decided to have coffee. We'll have been married for 10 years this year. First met him when I was 8 and he was 10. Our moms were friends and we had a little crush on each other, but he went to boarding school overseas. Meet him again when 12 and he was 14 when we are at the same New Year's Eve party with parents and almost kiss, still dorky shy kids. Then send emails and messaging each other while we live in different countries over the years. Meet him again when I was 22 and we start dating. He is now very wealthy and I am getting my graduate degree. We date for a few months when I realize that we are not right for each other. He doesn't like it when I voice an opinion or his male friends get along with me. We break up, he gets married 6 months later and I meet my boyfriend, so we are both happy in the end. At least we both got closure that the person we idealized as kids, teens was not the real person. We got married. We grew up together in a relatively small town where you knew 90% of the people you went to school with. We met in middle school and we were acquaintances, but I had a huge crush on her. She ended up dating a friend of mine in high school, who ended up being a pro football player. Guy was a giant, so obviously I kept my feelings for her to myself out of self-preservation. After high school, she went to Baylor, and I ended up living in Austin. I joined a band because that's what you fucking do when you're an early 20s dude living in Austin. My band had a monthly gig booked in Waco, which she ended up attending. We chatted, I got her number, and we would go to dinner before my gigs when I was in town. She ended up moving to Austin where she didn't really know anyone other than myself, so I integrated her into my social circle. We started dating shortly thereafter, and 3 years later, were married. We've now been married for 6 years, have a daughter, and another child on the way. Best fine fucking coincidence to ever happen to me. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.